Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Onside. And as you can see from the background, it's not Dubai, it's Blackburn. I'm back in Blackburn. I had a night flight, so I'm quite shattered, quite tired. I'm getting on a bit, so obviously these night flights are quite bruising to the body. But glad to be back. Glad to be back. I mean, it was a fantastic holiday. Uwais, my regular partner, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. Again, visited Germany, as you know. We shot a little quick brief special on Mbappe whilst I was in Germany. You were in Dubai. But we got back, been here for 3 or 4 days, doing well. You're right. You're not what you once were. A little bit longer in the tooth, are you? Must be difficult in economy class with some of those long haul
You
long
know
haul
full well I was in business class.
All right. Wow. Business
But we're
class.
humble people. We're humble people.
I mean, so let me get this right. South of France, returning on a private jet, flying to Dubai, business class, flying back from Dubai, business class. But not all good. All good. Very good.
It was fantastic. I mean, I obviously I don't want to talk about Dubai, but I've been, I think, 5 or 6 times. And it's an incredible holiday destination. So just in case the Dubai tourist board is watching, and they might give me a free holiday, but it is a fantastic destination. It really is. It's every single time I've been there, it just gets better and better. And it just for those who will know the history of Dubai, I think in the 90s it was just pure desert, or at least a large part of it was desert. What money and engineering can do and a vision can do, it's just fantastic. So it was a great holiday, much needed. But glad to be back. And obviously the last show, I mean, it was from Dubai, but having watched it again, it looked like a prison cell again because the lighting was poor, the curtains were drawn. So it was the most unglamorous Dubai I think anybody has ever seen. But glad to be back. Glad to be back with OS and hopefully putting on a good show. I hope so.
Absolutely.
Right. Let's get cracking. Let's get cracking. The first topic, always, it's a topic we've talked about maybe 3 or 4 times. It's this saga about Harry Kane. Is he going? Is he not going? What's happening with Harry Kane? So at the moment, obviously, there's still some talk about Bayern Munich. It seems to be that the only team that is seriously interested is Bayern Munich. There's a little bit of talk with PSG, but at the moment, it just seems Bayern or nothing. So what's your take on this saga, which seems not to be ending?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I still think you've got 2 of the best strikers in Europe, or definitely amongst the best in terms of Kylian Mbappe and Harry Kane. And neither saga seems like it's drawing to a satisfactory conclusion, let's say, or one that gives us some finality on it. And Harry Kane, where are we with this story currently? I mean, I regard Harry Kane as the most iconic player in the Premier League currently, because of his historical achievements over the last 6 or 7 years, if not longer. He's definitely the most iconic English player. So it's a big story for me. It's a huge story. And ultimately, currently, what the current status is that Bayern Munich, there's clear dialogue between Spurs and Bayern Munich. That much nobody's disputing. Harry Kane could clearly have put this story to bed. He hasn't. So the fact is, you can assume from that, or deduce from that he's clearly open to a move, because at this stage of preseason, he could have put this to bed and said, no, I'm going to be staying at Spurs for at least 1 more season. The fact that he hasn't tells you that there is some progress being made. Now, if you read the papers, it would seem that this past Monday, there's been some Bayern officials flying into the capital and having discussions with Daniel Levy. What I did find interesting about the reports coming out of that discussion was that no further meetings had been planned, which I always find a little unusual when those reports come out, because normally it's a case of, right, okay, what are next steps? When are we next talking? Maybe we'll give each other 5 days and book something in for Friday over an online call or meeting face to face. I mean, there's been a bid apparently made of around 82 million, I believe it is. And currently would seem that that's not been enough to get an agreement. But what seems to be the case is that there seems to be an appetite on all sides. It would seem to get an agreement over the line. We then got these reports yesterday or the day before that Harry Kane or Harry Kane's camp are suggesting, no quotes whatsoever, but just reports that if in the event that the move isn't done by the Premier League Open, and I believe they're playing Brentford first up, that they will stay at Spurs out of respect for Spurs and the manager. Now, I take reports like that with a pinch of salt, and I think if you read the Sky Sports News article as well, they say, well, there's also conflicting reports to say that he'll be more than open to the move until the transfer window ends 1st of September. So make of that what you will. I think what is clear, I think, is that he's open to the move. I think that's very difficult to argue against. What I believe is the case is just that final maybe 10 million, 15 million. And I think Daniel Levy, and it's just me reading between the lines, I think he wants to receive an offer that generally, I'm not saying he cares about how he comes across or how the deal comes across, but I think he wants it to come across as though he's managed to secure a representative fee for a player who's at the top of his form, but has only got 1 year left on his deal. So in the end, there's some good PR to come out of it. The fact that they would be able to secure close to 100 million for a player who is 30 and, like I said, is in the final year or going into the final year of his contract. So I've never been one to believe that Daniel Levy is willing to forego a fee. I think he would like to secure a big fee for his biggest asset, for his single biggest asset. It's not even close. So I think in the end, as I've thought all summer, although I was of the opinion that Manchester United would be the front runners for him, seems like they've gone in a different direction for a player we may speak about later on. I still believe this deal will get done. And I think those reports about how Kane would be willing to stay if the deal's not done before the Premier League Open, I think that's with a view to perhaps applying a little bit of pressure to try and get the deal over the line. I've never understood why, just because a deadline might pass, that a player would be suddenly happy to just commit another season, when clearly right now, as of today, he's not willing to commit to Spurs. Otherwise he would have, right? So I'm of the opinion that I think it will get over the line. I was skeptical at first. You'll remember that if the Bayern Munich move will materialize, but I think in the end, I do think it'll get done. I think if Bayern Munich are serious, they're not going to, for want of a better phrase, faff around for the sake of 5 or 10 million if it means a player who could potentially deliver them the Champions League and definitely make them more competitive in that competition. So that's where I stand. What are your thoughts, Ayub? How do you see it?
I mean, I think the last point that you spoke about, if it is true, I mean, it's very difficult to actually believe what's true, what's not true, because Harry Kane's not made any statements, and he's played it quite well, because I think, especially with the Manchester City move, he downed tools for a certain period of time, and maybe some of the Spurs fans weren't too impressed with his antics. Certainly with this one, he's not said anything, he's not done anything, he's acted very professionally. So really, the Spurs fans can't really get on his back and can't say that he's wanting a move. But the point that you said right at the end, that he said that if the move is not done before the first game of the season, he's going to stay for the whole season. He's not going to sign another contract, or at least that's what he's alluded to. So therefore, for Daniel Levy, if he wants a fee, it obviously has to be done over the next few weeks. So whether it's indirect pressure on Daniel Levy, I'm not too sure if that is the truth, but it seems that way. If that is the case, then it's clever from his management team, because I think if they want to move, I mean, I'm surprised, I must confess, I never expected him to leave the Premier League. I thought he'll move, but he'll move within the Premier League. So this will be a surprise. I think I'm more now convinced that he is quite serious about a move to Bayern Munich, which seems strange. As I said, I always thought he was a player that is quite obsessed with records, especially personal records. So to jeopardize that by going to Bayern Munich, I mean, he can obviously come back. I mean, I think I read somewhere that Spurs wanted a clause in the contract that they'd get first dibs. I mean, if he stays to 5 years, he'll be 35. So I'm not sure what player he'll be at 35. But I mean, he keeps himself in good shape. So maybe it's not that ridiculous a concept that he comes back and he's still, if not a potent force, so still a force. So my thoughts at the moment that it's much more likely to happen than not happen. And I absolutely credit Kane's camp. They've played this beautifully because they've not done anything which antagonizes the Spurs fans, which is sometimes always the case. You know, that's always the case sometimes where a player is so desperate for a move that they make decisions that are quite rash and quite inflammatory for the fans. So this has been played beautifully. I think if there's going to be a move, it has to be quick now, because really there's time is running out. We're a week and a bit away from the start of the season. So I'm much more inclined. I still think it's 70-30. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. But the problem then will be for Levy if Kane keeps to the word that's been in the press, that if he's not signed by Bayern by the start of the first game, if he just says, right, okay, I'm just going to play the whole season and then go free at the end of the season, that will be a potential loss of 80-90 million for Daniel Levy, who is a businessman first and foremost. So that just seems a difficult concept for me to understand, that Daniel Levy would allow that to happen. So it's still it's on the flip of a coin, really. I still think there's no certainty as to what's going to happen. It's been an interesting story that just really hasn't sort of got to a position where we've been certain as to what's going to happen. So it's a strange one, because he is without doubt the gun player of the Premier League, and for me, he's an outstanding footballer, and he is definitely a world-class player who would enhance any team in the world. So he's obviously a player that Bayern would be incredibly fortunate to have, and I think at 80 million is a steal. Even though he's got 1 year left, I think it's a steal, because I think what he gives Bayern, I don't think there's any other striker in the world at the moment who can give the same. So if Bayern get the move, fantastic. If he doesn't go, then obviously for Spurs fans, it's fantastic, at least for a season. And then as to what happens, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a few good points there I've just made a note of. You talk about the fact that it would be a snip for Bayern Munich. I mean, he's taken a bit of a battering in the German media currently about his age and the amount that Bayern are going to spend, because they would be breaking their transfer record in securing Harry Kane. So he's taken a little bit of damage in the German press, although I imagine that won't be so much of an issue tomorrow with the Germany women's team being bounced out of the Women's World Cup with a shock exit. So that might take Kane off the front and back pages. But no, look, I agree with you in terms of what he would bring to Bayern Munich. You mentioned flip of a coin, and I think that's because, to your point, there's been quite clearly strategies on both sides, right? Now, whether both parties came together, Daniel Levy and Harry Kane at the start, and said, look, this is how we're going to do it. We'll try and facilitate a move, but we need you to just kind of keep your head down and what have you. No real kind of comments in the media. Or alternatively, whether Harry Kane's camp have said, look, they've made their position clear, but they won't, again, just be saying anything, like you said, to your point, to turn the Spurs fans off. But you do get the point that if both parties are not if they've not agreed mutually on this particular strategy, to your point, I think now it's getting to a point where you may start to see a little bit of noise one way or another, because I am of the opinion that Daniel Levy is happy to cash in on him, but I think he would like it to be under the proviso, under the condition that it's Harry Kane pushing and forcing a move or what have you, and that his hands were tied. I think what Harry Kane's camp have kind of portrayed over the last couple of months, I guess, is, well, we'll just play it quiet. We won't really give the media anything to play with. We won't make our feelings clear one way or another. And we'll just let it be as if, Spurs have facilitated this move. I think it's just interesting just to see those kind of public PR games being played out, because Kane does care about his image ultimately, and so does Daniel Levy. I do think in the end it works and it goes through. The question is about if he does end up staying, does he sign that new contract? Now, by signing a new contract, many footballing observers would say that that is a massive gamble. That's a huge amount of faith. I mean, there were some rumors a couple of days ago about how he'll sign a new contract if he sees some upturn in form under the new manager. Well, if you remember, when Nuno was in charge of Spurs, he won Manager of the Month in August. So you can't just simply, and he didn't even see the rest of the year out. So it's not a case of you can just make an evaluation off a couple of months, can you? To say, right, I'm going to now commit the back end of my peak years, let's say, to this club. I don't believe in that report in any way, shape, or form. The question is, would he sign that contract to avoid any kind of clouds to hang over the manager, the club? That will he, won't he, will he go, will he want? I believe if he stays at Spurs, I would be very, very surprised if he signs a new contract. I think he could, in theory, run that contract down, and if he's then got one season of data under Ange Postecoglou, he can then sign for Spurs again in the summer and renew a contract from a free. So yes, it means that you would have a season of uncertainty, which doesn't help the club. I accept that. But surely Harry Kane's going to want to keep as much flexibility for himself as well. And signing a new contract at a time and at a point, at a bit of a fork in the road for Spurs in terms of the direction they take, would be a huge leap of faith on Harry Kane's part. And there's been no behavior on his side indicative to suggest that he believes that's the case right now. Clearly, he wants to move as of today. Otherwise, the clubs wouldn't be talking. He's already agreed tentatively some personal terms with Bayern Munich, because we know there's been some discussion. So he wants to move. Why would he then, if the move doesn't happen, simply just go ahead and sign a new contract? Unless, obviously, he's going to be made arguably not arguably, but most likely the top earner in the league, and he says, look, I'm happy to take 450k a week. Not that Spurs have shown any willingness to kind of pay any player of that particular salary. So anyway, it's a wait and see. I think it happens because of the very fact that both clubs are still talking. That tells me there's a move to be made there. Otherwise, they would have parted ways at this stage of the discussion, or at this stage of the preseason, or as the season's about to get going. So want to definitely keep an eye on, but a fascinating one.
Absolutely, yeah. But the time, I mean, the clock is ticking. It's about 7 or 8 days, but interesting. And no doubt we're going to be covering that again sometime next week, because something's going to happen one way or the other. So it's going to be an interesting story to follow. Right. This is something, it's a little bit self-indulgent, or certainly from Uwais's part, but it's something that I've been pushing. It's not something, it's not something that Uwais has been keen on. But some viewers might know, but I think many viewers probably won't know. I mean, it's something which is really popular. I think there's about 12 million worldwide that play Fantasy Premier League. But the chap who you're looking at in that box, now I'm not sure which way your screen will show, but Uwais Ahmed in 2016, 2017, if memory serves me right, or at least that's what you've told me, in the Fantasy Premier League. I mean, it's something that I play, but I usually play for about 4 weeks. And then when I'm doing rubbish, I just don't bother anymore.
That's a bit like Leeds' mantra.
It is. We throw in the towel. But Uwais Ahmed in 2016, 2017 had an incredible year. It was a year where I think there was about 6 million people that played that year. He was competing with 6 million. And Uwais Ahmed took it all the way to the last week. And my goodness me, I mean, he's told me this story, and it's a fantastic story. He just missed by as Ian Smith would say, the barest of margins, and finished second. An outstanding performance, and it's something that I think I'd love, Uwais, for you to just explain the year, the feelings, the emotions, and the last day dramas. Go on, take it away, sir.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. I mean, you're right. We wanted to discuss the Fantasy Premier League because it's a big part of the Premier League day-to-day weekends. There's something really great about not just following your team on the weekend, but and it's been a tool that's been mobilized by the Premier League to keep engagement at an all-time high, right? If you have a striker in your Fantasy Premier League team from, let's say, Crystal Palace, and Crystal Palace are playing Sheffield United at home at Sellers Park. It's a game you may not necessarily be watching normally, but if you've got a striker who's playing for Palace, home to a promoted club, and you may have made him captain, you're going to end up watching that game because you're thinking, right, let's get some real points on the board. So it's definitely been a tool that the Premier League have used very wisely, very well, advertised and promoted in an incredible way to get engagement with the product, engagement, eyeballs on the Premier League. It's a really smart and clever way. I've been playing it for a number of years, mainly out of university. So that was kind of 2005, 2006 onwards. And yes, the 2016-2017 season, I was only 22 at the time. No, I'm only joking. But yeah, I mean, the Fantasy Premier League season that year, unbelievable, incredible, so many different emotions. Just to give a little bit of a little bit of the journey. So, as you pointed out, it was about 6 million people playing. I think that year it's become popular. Every year it seems to increase by 1 million or so. And you start playing, you pick a team like everybody else. You start on zero. You're competing against so many people from around the world, and you don't have any. Of course, you don't have any hopes or any aspirations to be first or second in the world. You start just to play the game for the fun of the game in your private leagues with your friends and family, and it's fun, right? It's a lot of enjoyment. You follow all the games, it's a lot, and it's very exciting. And what happened that season was that I got off to an absolute stormer. And I was just every week, everything was going well. Injuries, I was avoiding injuries. All the players were scoring. I was having to make minimal changes. In terms of strategy, my general strategy is one slightly conservative. I don't really kind of are bold in making a lot of changes. I'm very methodical in terms of giving players time, identifying a run of fixtures where you think, he's got a good run of fixtures. I'm going to give him all 5 games to kind of prove himself out. And that kind of everything went true to form. There weren't too many kind of anomalies, or at least that I could think of. So the season went, in a sense, consistent with my conservative brand, which was be methodical. Someone's got a good fixture, a good set of fixtures, pick him for the 2 or 3 weeks, then seamlessly come off him, bring somebody else in. So it just worked so well. It was the season when Alexis Sanchez was playing for Arsenal and did incredibly well. Now, fast track into about week 15, 16, I'm already kind of really high at this stage. And I remember I got to about 48th in the world. And I remember thinking, Lord have mercy, you've got like the number 48 when you look at the overall leagues. And it's an incredible feeling. There's no two ways about it. It's not an ego thing. It's just, you think, wow, I mean, this is just a bit incredible. So I got to 48. I remember there was a player from Norway who was top at the time. And he was top by a fair bit. I was still some distance away from him. And I remember there was a week, I'm tempted to say about week 22, game week 22. So when would that be? That would probably just be after Christmas. So we're talking like around mid-Jan, maybe. And game week 22, I went to the top. I hit the top overall. And I just remember everything was working so well. I remember I selected Alexis Sanchez as captain away to West Ham. He scored a hat-trick, got an assist, I think, if memory serves. So everything was just working. Captains get double points. And everything was just working perfect. And I hit the summit. I hit the summit top. You look at the overall table and it's the number 1. It's
So at least you were. I mean, you must have told me that, but obviously I wasn't aware. I must have forgotten. So at one stage you were sort of top of the world.
Well, when you put it like that. So I mean, it's I guess even more consistent than that. So I hit the summit around game week 22. So I was number 1 in the world rankings, and I had a lead of about a couple of points. And from game week 22 onwards, Ayub, until game week 38. So around about 14, 15 game weeks, or whatever it was, 16 game weeks, I finished every single game week when all the games were played. So there's the one last fixture, normally on a Monday night, or if there's some midweek fixtures, maybe Wednesday night or whatever it may be. But when the fixtures were done for that particular game week, I was never outside first or second. So from game week 22 onwards, it was always like first, second, first, second, first, second. Anyway, so we get into kind of game week 35, 36, and I wouldn't say it's within touching distance, because there were still probably 4 of us that were still within 20, 30 points of one another. So you're probably thinking at that stage that, there's a good chance for a bloody good finish here. But if you think about it, the Premier League season, when it comes to those final fixtures, there's always double games because of the FA Cup cancellations and what have you, and Carabao Cup finals. So there's always double games. There's midweek games, and I do have to tell this. I mean, game week 37. I remember it was now getting close. Again, still 3 or 4 of us in there, I would say, still within with a good shot of winning the overall title, the world title, I guess you could call it, Fantasy Premier League. And I remember game week 37. There was a player, a participant from Liverpool. His name was Ben Crabtree, if memory serves, and he was an Everton fan, and he had picked Alexis Sanchez as his captain. And Arsenal was still chasing top 4 spot. And I remember in game week 37, I chose Harry Kane. His second game was away to Leicester. And this is where I want to take a little bit of the emotion and the kind of inside the journey, where I'm an Arsenal supporter, as many will know. But I remember thinking going into that game, because my opponent had Alexis Sanchez as captain, I was thinking, Wenger, one time you need to put this guy on the bench. And Wenger just used to play all of his players. So even though I'm an Arsenal fan, I was like, I just need Arsenal to drop points. If they lose, it's fine. I want Sanchez to be on the bench. I could care less about the top 4. I don't care whatsoever. I remember he plays Sanchez, because I had Sanchez, but he had Sanchez captain, so captains get double. So I need him to fail to some extent. Anyway, Sunderland, Arsenal dominated the game, but they get a brace last 15 minutes, Sanchez with both of them. And I remember thinking, Wenger, I just needed you one time to do me a favour, and you couldn't even do me a favour. But anyway, I go into the Thursday game. It was a Thursday game with my captain, Leicester at home to Spurs. And Kane in those days, as is even now, he'd been the run-up for the Golden Boot. So when it came to the last 4 or 5 games, Harry Kane would always be like shoot on sight policy. I mean, he has a shoot on sight policy at the best of times, but especially when he's in the run-up to getting the Golden Boot, he's really ramping up his potency in front of goal. So I had Harry Kane captain, and he scores 4 away to Leicester in a 7-2 win. And he got an assist as well. But remember, he also had Harry Kane, my opponent, so he gets half his points, or half the points on me. But he also ended up with a Ben Davies assist. Anyway, long story short, we go into game week 38 and I'm a couple of points ahead. So I'm number 1 in the world, game week 38 into the game. And at that point, I remember watching that Leicester Spurs game again, just to take the viewers inside. I'm watching the game. My brother comes from next door to watch the game with me. My son was young and he's still understanding it. So 2016, 2017. So he's 8 or 9. He's watching it with me. My wife's coming in. So every time Kane's scoring, we're celebrating. So she's coming and thinking, what? This is crazy. So it's a family affair at this stage, getting text messages. So everything was going amazing. At that point, Fantasy Football Scout, who's kind of the main kind of publication for kind of strategies and things like this, they got in touch with me. Premier League had got in touch with me to do an interview, which I obliged with. So there's a lot of outside interest, local, the paper's getting hold of you, wants to do a little piece on you, come take some photographs at home and all the rest of it. And we're not, it's a little, I wouldn't say unerring, and so in some ways it makes you feel a little bit.
I would have loved it. I would have milked it
for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a whirlwind. But you're trying to keep calm because you obviously ultimately got a job to do, right? You're trying to get this over the line. Anyway, so there's a lot of things happening. Fantasy Football Scout wrote the most amazing piece heading into game week 38, breaking down my strategies and Ben Crabtree's strategies, because it was kind of between us two for the going into the last game week. They told me, hey, we're going to give you the first view of the article. It's an amazing article. Anyway, you're in touch with them, blah, 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 all the rest of it. And going into that week, there were a lot of decisions to be made. I had to make some key decisions. So basically, I had Victor Anichebe in strike. Don't ask me why I had him, but anyway, it was because of
Everton. Was he Everton player?
I think he may have been at Sunderland at the time, but you're right. He did play for Everton. You're right. But anyway, long story short, I had to make 2 changes without doubt to make my team right, which means I was always going to incur -4. So if I'm 2 points ahead and I'm going to incur -4, I know before a ball is kicked, I'm going to be 2 points behind, because it looked like the other guy was going to just make the one change only. Last game of the season, Liverpool are playing home to Sunderland, Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
And knowing that the other gentleman was an Everton fan, it was brought to my attention, which I didn't know at this stage, only in that Fantasy Football Scout article, that he had not picked a Liverpool player all season because of obviously his I guess, personal rivalry with Liverpool. So there's me thinking, is he going to break this habit of a lifetime where he's going to finally pick a Liverpool player? They've got an absolute plum fixture.
And did he break it?
He didn't. As in. So he didn't break it. So you're right. He did not select a Liverpool player. So in the end, long story short, I picked Coutinho because Coutinho I thought was going to do well. He was playing for Liverpool at the time, but I had to make the second change. And you won't believe, last game week fixtures are always played on a Sunday. Yeah, like all the games are played on a Sunday. And in the morning, I was I coached my son's team at the time. I remember we played a friendly. I was just thinking about a few things, about what changes I could make. Anyway, in the run-up, 10-11, there was a magazine that wanted to get a hold of me and have an article, do an article with me or do an interview. I said, no, I need a bit of time to just think these last few decisions. Anyway, in the end, I needed to make the second change, but it was not clear who the second change was going to be. And the reason being is because the last game is when some managers give the odd peripheral player game. They're thinking minutes. In the end, I opted a second change for Lallana because I thought if he doesn't pick a Liverpool player and I pick two midfielders for Liverpool, Lallana was playing for Liverpool at the time, and Liverpool absolutely hammer Middlesbrough, which was always on the cards, there's a good chance that I may well be able to win this thing. And I was always going to be watching Liverpool-Middlesbrough as well. And it was Lucas Levia's last game for Liverpool that day. But anyway, we get into the start. My brother, we go to watch at my brother's house. My younger brother's there. My elder brother's there. My good friend Yas is there. And we're all there and we're all following it. Literally the first minute, this is at 4:01. I think the games kick off at 4, maybe 3. I can't remember last day. 4:01. 4 o'clock. This is 4:01. You can check it. Junior Stanislas scores for Bournemouth, and my opponent had him. So I was already thinking, bloody hell, we've not even got comfortable here. And Stanislas has scored. I think they were away to Leicester in the last game of the season. I can't remember, but he scores in the first minute. Anyway, I'm not focusing. I'm just focusing on this Liverpool game, thinking I need Coutinho to do well. I need Lallana to do well. We both had Harry Kane as captain in the game week 30. So that was going to be a draw, so to speak. In the end, at half time, the guys were checking furiously. I was quite zoned in, but my friend was checking, my brothers were checking. It felt I was a good 14, 15 points behind just because of the way the first half went. But there's always time, right? Second half, goals are going in. Last game of the season, there's always goals flying in left and right. You remember the famous West Brom United game, I think, where Lukaku scored a hat-trick. Not that season, but he finished 5-5. You know, there's always goals. Yeah. Last game of the season. Anyway, second half, Coutinho free kick, top corner. I say top corner. He pings it into the far corner. So already I'm making inroads. And then Lallana scores 3-0. And I'm thinking, and there's about 25 minutes left at Anfield yet. So I'm thinking, right, the floodgates have opened. It's time to make hay. And I just remember watching the last 15, 20 minutes. And even my brother, who's as devout a Liverpool fan as he'll get, and Liverpool were trying to get Lucas Levia a goal because it was his last game of the season. So my brother's going nuts because Coutinho's passing up opportunities to shoot. Lallana's passing up opportunities, trying to get this guy a goal. And he's like thinking, what are you doing? Shoot. You know, I remember Coutinho missed a great opportunity. And in the end, I was ahead, like going into the last 10 minutes. And then 81st minute, they were away to Hull, Spurs. And Ben Davies scored 81st minute, and he had Ben Davies. And when he scored in the 81st minute, when you're doing the mental arithmetic in your mind, which is what I was doing at the time because the website was crashing, I knew then that it just slipped away. I needed something else to happen. By that time, some substitutions had happened and all the rest of it. And I remember, so when it finished, you've got to wait for the points, the bonuses. But I knew I'd just come a little short. And Jake Humphrey on BT Sport even gave Ben Crabtree a shout out literally about half an hour after the game. So he was like, oh, well done. This is a time when TV was really participating in Fantasy Premier League. It just started to really take off, I would say. And Jake Humphrey, I remember I was watching at my brother's house and he's giving Ben Crabtree, I get a text message from the fantasy football scout, Mark Southerns, who tells me commiserations, well done, blah, blah, blah. We'll have a chat, all the rest of it. And I remember going home, and the overall feeling was one of disappointment because you forget a little bit that you finished second in the world when it's that feeling maybe Arsenal had last year, right? You've led for so long.
I was going to sort of say that it seems to be some similarities that you sort of lead and then maybe at the end I won't sort of say the bottle, but I
Oh,
suppose
thanks.
I mean
Thanks. But no, I mean, I remember my brother texted me, which was really appreciated. I still never forget it. He texted me about an hour and a half afterwards. And he texts me, not the brother I was watching with, that he tells me, oh, well done. I hope everything's all right. This and that, because he knows how I take these things. And I never forget that text message. And I just remember sitting upstairs in the bedroom, just taking a moment, because it's a very unusual 3 or 4 months. You're seeing people in the street and they're like, oh, good luck. And I remember setting up some cones at Plegate School for my son's team on a Saturday. This is 3, 4 weeks to go. And I remember someone shouting at me, oh, are you the guy who's talking? Yeah, oh, well, good luck. And it's a very unusual time in your life, especially for something that you're so invested in. But
your 15 minutes of fame.
Well, exactly. And look, it was an amazing time, and it is a good achievement. I contributed to a few articles there afterwards. There was a person writing a book about fantasy football afterwards, and he asked me the question. He said, a lot of people want to talk to the winners. He said, I want to talk to the people who finished second, because it's that realization that you'll never be in that position because you need so much to go for you. The odds are so remote. And I remember him asking me questions like, how does it feel to know that you're probably never going to ever be in that position ever again? I remember drafting a response. So yeah, there's a lot of emotion at the time. My overriding one at the end was still one of disappointment, but that's just because I love the game. I love football generally, but I love fantasy football as well. And when you're close, you obviously want to seal the deal. So yeah, no, amazing time. But yeah.
No, lovely story. I mean, I've heard that I've spoken to you about this, I keep on wanting to hear this. Do you know when sometimes you know the story, but then you want it to be a different ending where you finish first, because that is I mean, I think the reporter you were just talking about, he makes a really, really good point, because in a sense it's one of these where, I mean, I'm not sure the winners where they've finished the following season, the season after, because it seems to be it's a all or nothing. You do it once and you perhaps never do it again. So it to be so close in something which is it's iconic now, isn't it? Really, the Fantasy Premier League. It's an iconic competition that so many people invest so much time in. I mean, most offices always have their own leagues, and there's a tremendous achievement in being top in an office league with about 20 people. So to be second in 6 million is incredible. But there's a reason why. We've talked about this, and maybe Uwais, you can explain why you've been talking about it.
Yeah, well, look, we'll be playing Fantasy Premier League this season as well. Ayub will as well. I will. Badge, when he's back, he'll be playing for about 4 weeks exactly. You can't pick any Leeds players, Ayub. This is a Fantasy Premier League game. Yeah, we've created a Just Onside private league. We would encourage all of our viewers, and again, share it with friends, share it with family. We've created a private league with classic scoring. The code should be appearing right now if you're watching the podcast on YouTube. But yeah, we've created a private league. Let's join. Let's have some fun. Let's see where we all finish, and hopefully throughout the different podcasts that we'll be recording throughout the season, we'll be talking a little bit on Fantasy Premier League, a little segment, players to have, players to keep an eye on. So we'll kind of fill all of that out in terms of how we'll talk about it over the different episodes. But yeah, we thought, let's create a private league. It'll be fun. Encourage everyone to join. Again, the code will be present on your screen. So yeah, we look forward to kind of playing with you all. Good.
Yeah, and I will commit to the whole season, which I've never done. I've never, in all the leagues I've ever been part of, I've never committed to the whole season. But this time I will be committing to the whole season, even if I'm bottom, which I invariably will be.
We know your issues with commitment, but we digress. Let's continue.
All right, fantastic. Right then, it's the curtain raiser this weekend. I mean, we're about 8-9 days away from the Premier League, but there's a really mouth-watering game this weekend between two teams that know each other quite well, Arsenal and Manchester City. Do you think the game's going to be? Is there going to be whoever wins? Does that give them the advantage, or is it just a curtain raiser? Is that? What's your thoughts on that?
Just on the game itself, I don't put too much stock into the game. If you remember, I think it was last year's Community Shield when Liverpool played Man City. It was Haaland's first game, let's say, or obviously not the first competitive game, but a first game against supreme opposition, and you're looking to obviously win. And I think Liverpool won the Community Shield, if memory serves. And in the end, you saw the seasons that both clubs had. Manchester City went on to win the treble, and Liverpool had, by their high standards, a challenging year. So from my perspective, I think what you're looking for, more from an Arsenal perspective, because I think Man City have earned the right to have, even if they lost 5-0, I think you wouldn't read anything into it whatsoever, because they've earned the right. They've got enough equity in terms of their credibility and their achievements over the last 5-6 years that in the end, this is just another game, and they'll be ready to challenge for all honours next season. For Arsenal, though, I think it is an interesting game. If you remember, Man City did the double over them. Man City have beaten them quite consistently over the previous years. Arsenal have not earned the right, in my eyes, that they simply just belong at this top level. Yes, they had a really good season last year, really, really good season where they were competitive, they were in the title race. Unfortunate to not obviously see the job through. They've had a few changes. You've just had the news that Gabriel Jesus will miss a couple of weeks with this minor knee procedure. I think it's a little bit of scoping out. I don't think it's a major issue. I think he'll miss a couple of games, but he's obviously going to miss the first couple. He's obviously and definitely missing the Community Shield. But Declan Rice, yesterday they were playing Monaco in the friendly. He played to the left of Thomas Partey, which is a very different position to what he was playing at West Ham. So there's a lot of turnover at Arsenal to some extent. You've got Xhaka leaving. Will Rice replace Xhaka, or will Rice end up in his normal sixth position? And Havertz ends up in that position now with Jesus out. Does Havertz assume the top role, or does he play Trossard there? So there's a few things to look at. There's some talk about David Raya joining, which is a very interesting one, given that Ramsdale is still fairly secure as a number one. So let's see what comes of that. So I think from an Arsenal perspective, the one warning sign that I would give to Arsenal that I've seen for a little while now, and I won't put too much stock in it just yet, is that they finished the season, and as well as this pre-season, conceding a lot of opportunities. And I always look at that in all games, even if you win the game 4-0, if you're conceding a lot of opportunities, you cannot achieve anything of it. You can't hit the high levels. So even last year, if you think about the first half, first 2/3 of the season, they dominated a lot of games where you'd be like, yeah, they deserve to win that game. Even the game at Old Trafford, where they lost to Manchester United 3-1, they came away with a lot of praise because of the dominance they showed at Old Trafford for large parts of that game. I wasn't one of those who suggested they deserved to win the game, but obviously, clearly, they showed signs that they were superior to Manchester United for large parts of that game. So for me, I look at how hard a team works to prevent chances being conceded against them. I would argue Mourinho's Chelsea were probably the best at that. But I look at that as a telltale sign if a team is absolutely plugged in, because the objective of football is a very simple one. It's to combine an elite defense, let's say, with kind of imperious offensive capability to be able to optimize your goals scored compared to your goals conceded. It's a very simple concept, but it's hard because high risk, high reward, and all the rest of it. I think Arsenal have just started to veer away from some of their kind of defensive responsibilities. And when you lose a Xhaka and you replace him potentially with a Havertz who's more offensive minded, you definitely lose some of that defensive mindset. And I always think if you want to win games, you've got to be in games. And if you keep falling a goal behind, that always makes life difficult. So for Arsenal, I think there's a bit more on it, a bit more on the game. I think for Man City, they've earned the right for us not to read anything into this particular game.
I mean, I probably slightly. I mean, I think you made some really, really good points in terms of it's probably more important for the Arsenal than it is for Man City to have a victory. But I think it will be important for Man City to just make sure, because in a sense, what you don't want to do, it's almost like you've got your foot on the opposition's throat. You don't want to let go. You don't want to give them any cause for optimism at all. I think for the Arsenal, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to the game. I mean, albeit it's a game sometimes. I think lots of fans probably don't take it as seriously as other games, and probably rightly so. I mean, it's the lesser of the cups, but I think that in recent years, clubs have taken it seriously, and I think these two clubs will take it seriously. Players like Rice, I think he obviously wants to set a marker down as to what he's going to do and what he's going to be at Arsenal. And I think there are others there as well. I think with Man City, I think I'm sure Guardiola is saying, well, look, we've got the better of the Arsenal. I want to make sure that that's what we continue, that when they play us again, it won't be on the back of a victory. Albeit you can turn around and say, well, it doesn't really matter. But I think psychologically, I think probably Guardiola still wants to have that dominance. He still wants to have that superiority complex. But I'm just looking forward to it as a game of football. I think it's going to be exciting. I can't wait to see Rice. I think this is now the opportunity. Is he worth? We had a show about is he worth 100 million? Now, albeit this is not going to define whether he's worth 100 million, but certainly he's going to give an opportunity to show us what he can do with better players around him. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, and it's a fantastic curtain raiser for the Premier League next season. So good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, just very quickly before we wrap up, just wanted to get your thoughts just very quickly if we can, and we will cover this in future episodes. So you're right. I think the Community Shield between two big teams, it'll be interesting to see how they both fare. And you're right. Anytime there's been a new signing like a Declan Rice, a big signing, it's always good to see, right? How do they fit in? How do they look comfortable and what have you, even though we're not going to make any firm judgments there afterwards. City obviously trying to get Josko Gvardiol, the centre-back from RB Leipzig, over the line for about 77 million. They won't get him over the line for the game on Sunday, it seems, but they may have him in readiness for the season opener. One little small piece, if we can just cover. What were your thoughts on the it seems the inevitable signing that United are going to make with regards to their number 9, the Atalanta striker, Rasmus Hojlund? They look to have secured him for about 64 million plus 8 million add-ons from Atalanta in Italy. They've obviously gone down the youthful route. Let's say he's only 20 years of age, when they could have definitely got themselves in the Harry Kane sweepstakes and maybe other more slightly high-profile strikers. What's your thoughts on that signing? And do you think he's one that might take a little bit of time, or do you think at some point he should add a lot of quality to that United squad?
It's a surprise, but it's one where I think I've got a tremendous amount of respect for Ten Hag. I think he's built up a lot of credibility, and I think what he's done so far, he seems to have a strategy, an idea, a philosophy. So therefore, he's gained a lot of trust. So whatever he does, there seems to be a great deal of faith placed in that. So for that reason, I'm thinking that it's a good signing. As I said, I mean, I'm surprised, but because it's Ten Hag, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that this is a quality world-class coach who has a real deep understanding of the game, of players. So when he buys a place, he knows exactly what their abilities and characteristics are and how it will fit in to the system that he plays. So I'm intrigued, because I would say that it's a player that is not, I would consider, ready right now. Which is unusual, because for a team to spend that sort of money, you'd be thinking that it's a player that's ready to hit the ground running. So I'm slightly surprised, but as I said, Ten Hag's done such a great job that who am I to question a decision that a coach of that caliber has made?
Yeah, and I think that's a fair shout. I mean, I do have this, I wouldn't say an interesting theory, but I do want to just run it by you. I think you're right. He's got so much equity right now at Manchester United, and rightly so. He's had a good first season to win the Carabao Cup, to get to the FA Cup final, losing only to the best team in Europe, to achieve third spot and finish in the Champions League. The question is, what I was thinking about when you think about especially getting Ronaldo out the door, changing some of the makeup, making the team a little bit more youthful. They've obviously bought Mason Mount as well this season. They've replaced the keeper, who's definitely an upgrade with regards to the footballing side of things, for sure. I just wonder whether or not, I think it's quite a smart play from Ten Hag to this extent. I think they could have got themselves in the Harry Kane sweepstakes, right? That's pretty clear, depending on obviously what, if rumours are to be believed that Daniel Levy's not willing to sell to a Premier League club. But I think if you put 120 million down, I think you'll soon find that that policy will change. I just wonder whether or not he's bought a player. I don't mind the signing, because ultimately it's also about signing players before they become elite as well. Everyone wants a sure thing. Everyone wants to know, right? Well, if tomorrow somebody buys Mbappe, you know what you're getting. If somebody buys Haaland, you know what you're getting, because they've proven it. You've seen it before, and that's what we as human beings take comfort in. If I've seen it before, I can buy into it a little bit more. Whereas I don't mind these type of signings, because you're trying to get him to, you're buying them early, so to speak, before they hit that kind of top elite level, let's say. So I don't mind if you see yourself that he's a bit of a youth prodigy and he's a bit of a project, but he's going to become elite. They did the same type of signing when they bought Martial, and what I mean by that is he had a little bit of a good reputation at Monaco. He's very young. Obviously, it's not materialized in the same way because of injury and all the injuries and the rest of it. But I do like that type of signing. It's not always buy the player who's scoring 20 goals, 10 assists. There's not many of those flying around, or they're going to cost you a pretty penny. I think buying a player who's about to hit the big time, I can definitely understand. And I think the second thing is, I think Ten Hag, year one, if he goes out and buys a Harry Kane, now this might sound a bit of an unusual theory, but if he goes out and buys a Harry Kane, or if he goes out and buys an elite player, yes, that gives you a better chance, you would think, of achieving your ultimate aim, which is to win the Premier League. Let's be very clear. Definitely challenge and win the Premier League. But that also fast tracks the timing and expectation. And that becomes a very different dynamic. When I was speaking to some Manchester United fans yesterday, they were saying, well, we're still some way away, which I don't agree with. But I think this allows them to manage things still on their own timeline a little bit, to say, oh, right, we've taken another step forward. Mount, perhaps instead of Eriksen, that's a bit of an upgrade, some would argue. Onana ahead of De Gea, that's a bit of an upgrade. Hojlund, now, they never even had a number 9 on top of Weghorst, was on loan. So they'd say, oh, we've upgraded. I think the moment you buy a Kane, that timeline's fast-tracked. Right, we expect you to challenge for the title. I think saying you've got to win it, I don't believe in all that nonsense. You have to challenge for it first. So I just wonder whether he's been smart and savvy to just alleviate, I don't want to say go under the radar, but just still keep that pressure as though, oh, yeah, United can challenge. I mean, I've heard some rumours or some stories this week about they're still some way away from City and all the rest of it. I'm not so sure, in the sense of, over a 38-game season, yes, Manchester City have earned the right to start as favourites. I think that's fair, and they'll start as the bookies' favourites. But I just wonder whether or not he's bought a player who's young, where there will be a certain level of patience. And I think that one that will also afford the manager a little bit of, maybe not the supreme expectation, let's say, or that kind of high-level expectation that is it. United must challenge, otherwise it's a failure. I think it's another organic step maybe on their journey to try and challenge for the title.
I'd be expecting, after the season that they've had last year, that United fans, I mean, not all fans, but I think quite a few fans will be probably thinking, well, look, we finished third. Maybe we can skip 2 places, because that's the mindset they should have. I mean, I don't think it's just a case of, right, gradual. This is Manchester United. So therefore, their thinking, their thought process should be, right, we want to challenge for the league. And it has to be. I mean, I would be bitterly disappointed if I was a United fan after the season they had last season, if the mindset wasn't to try and win the league. So with that in mind, that's why it's slightly a surprise. But as I said, I mean, you said that he's got the equity. So therefore, we'll give Ten Hag the benefit of the doubt. But certainly as a United fan, I'd be expecting the team that I support to be challenging on all fronts. So really, that's the position that I have. Whether this player is ready right now, I'm not too sure. But we'll soon find out in about a week's time.
Yep, absolutely.
And on that note, I think we should call it a day.
You need to get some rest, Ayub. That's
I
why.
do, yeah. I mean, it's been a long 24 hours. But from next week, obviously, it's a week before the Premier League, so we're going to up the ante a little bit. We're going to have a few different things. One of the shows we'll talk about what we consider to be the top 4 and the bottom 3. We've got a slight surprise as well. There's a show that we're planning on doing, which is going to be slightly different to what we've done in the past. So that's something to look forward to. So, but from next week, that's it. It's showtime. The Premier League starts. So hopefully by that time as well, Bash, with negotiations have taken place.
We're speaking to his camp.
Yeah. It's a bit like the Kane situation at this moment in time. We're not sure which way it's going, but hopefully he'll see sense and he'll join us again next week. But let me, before we end the show, ask you to do the usual thing. So please smash a like. I mean, I keep on looking at the likes and there's not as many as I'd like. So I'm not going to beg on bended knees, but the next best thing, if you can, smash a like. Subscribe if you haven't. Share with as many people as you know. If you don't know, just share with them anyway. They might be wondering what the hell this is, but try and share it. Okay, so until the next time, stay onside.
On the basis that you've had a very long day and a very long 24 hours, I'm going to let you off. But yeah, indeed, until the next episode. Good.
All right.